In our individual and collective search for answers, purpose, and meaning, what if we've overlooked a single, universal, ubiquitous, and unequivocal truth staring us all in the face all this time? Not just meaning, a method. And not just any method, the method. An analogous ultimate methodology, which lies at the very heart of all phenomena. The AUM of life. By methodology, we mean a process by which phenomena come to be. A methodology is a series of causes and effects, building one on top of another in succession, a progression. It's analogous because no phenomenon can actually be the ultimate methodology. All things are merely analogues of it, expressions of it, applications of it. We could say manifestations of it. Or put another way, the Tao that can be expressed is not the eternal Tao. The analogous ultimate methodology's ultimate designation derives from its nature as being the basis of all phenomena, and the process by which we can come to know that nature. We are, of course, referring to the analogous ultimate methodology of human psychology and mental wellness. So let us lift the veil on the AUM of psychology. We begin with a side-by-side comparison with the analogous ultimate methodology as it is expressed in the human immune system. We'll look first at a general overview of the process, with a more detailed description as it pertains to human psychology to follow. The human psychology is always present and alert, ready to respond to infection or disease, which literally means dis-ease. That is, the moment we become aware of one or more symptoms. Psychologically, this equates to mindfulness of our mental, emotional, and physical state. It's being ever present and aware of our experience of mental or emotional dis-ease, stress, anxiety, depression, excitability, etc. After its initial reaction, the immune system goes about examining the general nature of the infection. For instance, is it viral, bacterial, fungal, or other? Likewise, we need to perform a kind of self-diagnosis, identifying in simple terms what's behind our dis-ease: anger, fear, lust, pride, shame, gluttony, laziness, etc. These are examples of psychological aggregates responsible for both pleasure and pain. Once the threat's nature is determined, the immune system triggers an autoimmune response, such as inflammation, in order to contain the threat while it determines its precise nature, so we can mobilize an effective response. Psychologically, we need to perform a similar process of containment, which we call self-control in the moment, and then later an analysis of the psychological aggregate and how it went about causing our dis-ease. The immune system then synthesizes and mobilizes an appropriate response to disease based on its in-depth analysis of the threat. When we comprehend how the particular psychological aggregate we are analyzing caused us and others suffering. Next, the immune system eliminates the threat. Once we have consciously comprehended a psychological aggregate, it can be eliminated from the psyche. The immune system then cleans up the mess caused by the infection. The body is freed from the infection. Psychologically speaking, the unconscious mind cleans up the mess left by the psychological aggregate, and a tiny amount of consciousness is freed from the subconscious and is made more conscious. Lastly, the immune system repairs damage and returns the body to a state of equilibrium, along with any newly created antibodies it employed throughout the process. Psychologically, we return to equilibrium with greater self-knowledge and resilience than we had before. We learn, grow, and become just a little stronger and a little wiser for having gone through the process. It is self-evident. If nature in her wisdom gave us an immune system to protect our physical body from disease, then it follows Mother Nature would have devised a congruent defensive system to protect our metaphysical bodies from dis-ease. But if that is the case, what is the psychological equivalent to an antigen? What would it be like, and how would it operate? And why does it remain hidden from us, along with the true nature of our psychology? Enter materialist science and allopathic healthcare, who of course will say that they have looked very closely at the matter, pun very much intended, and determined that because diseases of the body are mostly physical and affect hardware, naturally the same must be true for psychology, which is likewise physical hardware, regulated by neurochemicals. That's music to the ears of Big Pharma, who, supported by physicians, are all too happy to provide an endless supply of drugs to medicate suffering individuals, treating symptoms of psychological dis-ease and allowing patients to remain ignorant of their internal psychological self-healing system. That's why we're here to drop the hammer of the analogous ultimate methodology as it pertains to human psychology, put a crack in the dogmatic beliefs of neuroscience, and shatter once and for all the idea that mind is a physical phenomenon. To begin, let's look at another analogous phenomenon. The equivalent of an antigen affecting computer systems is called malware, and primarily affects code, be it software or firmware. Antivirus, firewalls, and anti-malware software continually monitor activity and routinely perform full system scans in order to detect and remove any potential threats. That is exactly analogous to the practice of mindfulness, in which we also should be monitoring our mental, emotional, and sensual activity, continually scanning our psychology, that is, our metaphysical code. Not surprisingly, this is what many scientists, doctors, neurologists, and even psychologists would likely dismiss as speculative nonsense. Yet they all would tell you the devastating effects of autoimmune disorders, and none would recommend turning off your computer's real-time virus monitoring. And here's why. The moment you stop monitoring threats in real time, you effectively shut down the whole anti-malware program. That's because the entire process, like the human immune system, is predicated on the capacity to detect threats in the first place. Similarly, when we fail to practice mindfulness, we effectively hamstring the analogous ultimate methodology of psychology. We become completely blind to what may be happening inside of us at any given time. We're left completely vulnerable and exposed to the whims of metaphysical malware. Be it computers or our psyche, we're left susceptible to all manner of malicious influence from within and without. This phenomenon is brilliantly allegorized in the classic sci-fi anime Ghost in the Shell. We don't have time to get into the details, but in this iconic scene from the film, the timeless and universal allegory of the deliberate fall is perfectly juxtaposed against the malevolent forces behind the hacking of human cyborgs for their own nefarious ends. It is a voluntary descent into hell, which in no uncertain terms is what it means to answer the call to adventure, which every mythical hero does in their journey of self-actualization. The deliberate or conscious descent into hell represents the crossing of the threshold between the known and the unknown, according to Joseph Campbell's exhaustive and monumental exploration of the monomyth of the hero's journey. Ghost in a Shell is an example of contemporary art expressing the analogous ultimate methodology for our time, just as countless stories, myths, traditions, and scriptures have expressed AUM for the eras in which they first appeared. And, like them, Ghost in a Shell vividly allegorizes the consequences of vulnerable human machines being infected and taken control of by malicious agents. And the ultimate sacrifice of the mechanical self, which the hero makes in order to defeat evil. So let's take a closer look at the nature of those malicious agents. Malware is essentially self-interested code, including viruses, spyware, adware, and if we're not careful, will also include malicious artificial intelligence, which seeks to take control of a machine's system resources in order to execute its program, which is of course binary in nature, so that it can influence components of the device and achieve some predetermined goal, which most often includes making copies of itself. The analogous phenomenon in our psychology are egos, which is Latin for eyes. These are psychological aggregates, including fear, anger, greed, envy, lust, pride, and its dark sibling shame, gluttony, laziness, and all the many expressions, permutations, and combinations which seek to take control of our human resources in order to execute their program, which is, of course, binary in nature, so that they can influence emotions, thoughts, and sensations, and achieve some predetermined goal, which includes replicating themselves. Now, when we take a look at this image and hear the term human resources, what likely comes to mind is the corporation, which isn't surprising, considering corporations are structured to be persons under the law, which take control of human resources in order to execute their program, which is based on a binary profit-loss business plan, seeking to win the hearts and minds of consumers, most often by appealing to their five senses, to achieve their goal of growing shareholder value and to replicate themselves globally and grow by mergers and acquisitions. When we consider the behavior of a typical corporation side by side to that of egos, it is no wonder corporations are considered to be persons under the law. It should also come as no surprise that when the award-winning Canadian documentary film entitled The Corporation, based on the book by Joel Bakan, examined what kind of person a corporation is, the answer was clear: a psychopath. An individual so overrun by egos, so controlled by self-interest, that they've lost all compassion and empathy. A psychopath becomes an agent of control, a cold, calculated, robot-like persona, completely indifferent to the suffering of others, just like any virus, malware, or ego. We're beginning to see how the microcosm relates to the macrocosm, and how the hunger for human resources in the microcosm translates into corporate interests in both human and natural resources. But let's not forget corporations are governed by people, and those individuals are, as are all of us, mostly governed by their egos. Therefore, the corporation cannot be anything but a collective expression of ego. And everyone in the middle, from the board of directors to management to employees, partners, customers, and the world, find themselves sandwiched between the top-down influence of corporate ego and their own inner egos. And we all know what the result is. Exploitation, expropriation, and exhaustion. But hang on a minute. Let's observe that just as with the industrial press, the only reason the external pressure being applied on us from above is able to have any crushing power at all is because of our own inner egos, represented here by the bottom plate. What if, through the diligent practice of the analogous ultimate methodology on our own psychology, we could slowly and systematically dissolve our egos? With fewer egos inside of us to react to pressures from outside of us, wouldn't that reduce the pressure we experience, making it easier to cope with? What if, rather than reacting with ego, we allowed external forces of pressure to pass through us without reaction? Would that not weaken the malevolent forces in the world trying to control us, and in turn increase our strength and resilience in the face of challenging ordeals? And wouldn't that be a practical way to cope better with the countless pressures being applied to us each and every day? But of course, we're not there yet. And we know we're not there yet, so long as we allow ourselves to fall prey to all the countless ways our many egos control, manipulate, and harm ourselves and others. In synthesis, we need look no further than ourselves to find the sources of all human pain and suffering, and the phenomenon behind the actual matrix enslaving this humanity. So what are these so-called human resources our egos crave so much? Quite simply, they are consciousness and vital energy. Egos trap our consciousness and feed on our vital energy. And how do egos get a hold of our consciousness and consume our energy? Through craving and aversion, identification and rejection, rationalization and irrationality, and a million other permutations, combinations, and versions of dialectic thoughts, mercurial feelings, and cravings and aversions related to sensual experience, all revolving around the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Let's take a closer look now at just one of these, identification. There are a near unlimited ways our egos can make us feel, given their individual nature or program. For example, a combination of egos, including anger deep within the subconscious mind, can cause many symptoms of depression. While the truth of the fact is found in the experience of it, the egos enter the mind and subjectively filter that experience, causing a thought to arise surrounding it. I am depressed. Seems straightforward enough, and yet it is a bold-faced lie. It has no resemblance to reality. If you look up the word depression in Wikipedia, you are not going to find your picture and biography, unless you happen to be this guy. And if you're tempted to rationalize I am depressed as a harmless figure of speech, see it instead for what it actually is, a snippet of malicious code belonging to a particularly potent and hypnotic piece of neurolinguistic malware. If you've ever experienced depression, you know how insidious the thought, I am depressed, can be. We know we suffer from depression regularly, and like all people who have suffered from depression, we experience the thought, I am depressed, arising spontaneously and automatically, often against our will. That is because, in that precise moment, it is not we who are depressed. It is the ego, the I behind the depression, which is expressing itself through our mind. And boy, can its voice be convincing. But we can put the voice of depression back in its place through self-observation or mindfulness and see the reality of the moment for what it is. I feel depressed. This is the unfiltered objective truth of the situation. You cannot deny experiencing the symptoms of depression. You really do feel depressed. So say so, simply and without embellishment. Being mindful of both your actual experience and the attempts by egos to hypnotize you into becoming ignorant of your experience by identifying with their false narrative about it is the first step to freeing yourself from their influence. So now let's get into the steps and how to practice them in a bit more detail. As we just demonstrated, step 1 is mindfulness, specifically self-observation of our 3 brains and 5 centers, intellectual, emotional, and motor instinctive sexual, through which we experience our waking hours, and the systems of our human machine through which egos filter our experiences and gain control of our precious human resources. Being aware of the activity in our 3 brains and 5 centers helps us discern between automatic mechanical ego reactions and conscious intuitive responses to our circumstances. Without mindfulness, we forget ourselves. We react like automatons, get caught up in harmful thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and lose sight of who we are and who we long to be, the best version of ourselves. So mindfulness is not only self-observation, it is also self-remembering. And remembering who we truly are, in turn, helps us from identifying with erroneous thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Step 2 is diagnosis. Here, we are not referring to diagnosing mental illness. We don't want to encourage any psychological hypochondria. That said, self-observed awareness of our psychological state isn't very useful unless we can determine the causes of our current state. Another way to say this is self-exposition, meaning both to expose and exposit. Journaling comes to mind, but there is really no easy way to whip out a journal in the heat of the moment. And yet, we truly need to take stock of ourselves throughout the day, particularly during and right after experiencing moments of drama. Which egos were responsible for which thoughts, feelings, and sensations? However, just like in the case of the immune system and anti-malware, it is not enough to make a general diagnosis. We need to know exactly how the identified ego or combination of egos are causing harmful thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Which brings us to step 3, analysis. Another way to say this is we need to engage the problematic entities responsible for our suffering and dysfunction in the same way that the immune system and anti-malware do. This is where traditional journaling and meditation come into play, incorporating visualization, retrospection, introspection, and contemplation. This is not a process of thinking. Rather than trying to work out the answer for ourselves, we need to relax and allow our conscious creative imagination to replay the facts as best as we can recollect them, and allow the answers to just simply come to us. We need to remove the subjective influence of our eyes, characterized by the ceaseless cacophony of thoughts, emotions, and sensations running through our psychology. And for obvious reasons, would you trust the perpetrators of a crime to help in its investigation? We relax, simply observing our thoughts and letting them go, allowing the egos in our subconscious to settle down, making room for insight, intuition, revelation, even samadhi, which means ecstasy, to break through the unconscious into our conscious mind. So retrospection through visualization and contemplation and meditation and journaling are key to processing our observed reactions to experiences so that we may follow through with step 4 in the process. Synthesis. Comprehension of how the egos being observed create suffering for us and others. Synthesis does not come quickly or easily. It requires great patience and is literally the source of the expression, patience is a virtue. In synthesis, we know by virtue of insight, intuition, revelation, or what seasoned meditators sometimes refer to as a flash of lightning in the dark of night, how it is that one or more of our egos being analyzed causes us and others suffering. Imagine an ancient Greek philosopher leaping up from his chair shouting, "Eureka!" Similarly, you will know when you've achieved comprehension by how it feels. Expansive, not reductive. Effortless, not forced. Instead of thinking you know, you'll know you know. It's not just an idea or opinion, it's the truth. A single moment of comprehension can overrule a lifetime of indoctrination and intellectual study, and even overturn centuries of misguided and erroneous beliefs. Synthesis is what we seek through self-observation, self-analysis, and comprehension. But synthesis requires great patience. Step 5 is catharsis. In the context of the previous step and the resulting analog knowledge which can be synthesized through diligent mindfulness and patient self-analysis, we can say with confidence that egos are here to teach us a profound life lesson, with the potential to change the course of our lives and those around us. Once we've learned our lesson from any particular ego, that ego is no longer needed and can be eliminated. Since egos thrive on negatively charged vital energy, comprehended egos can be neutralized by vital energy that is positively charged. Much could be said on the actual metaphysics of elimination, but this is neither the time nor the place. However, we must make clear here that we are not talking about positive thinking. Remaining positive and responding with positive vibrations to events is one thing, but doing so will not eradicate egos. On the contrary, obsessive positivity is a sign of a very clever, very subtle kind of ego manipulation, which allows egos to operate with complete impunity, even as an individual believes they are liberated from their ego. Avoiding the sources of negativity within us cannot take us to the next step. Liberation. Liberation from the detrimental effects of an ego follows its elimination. Yes, the tiny amount of consciousness it had enslaved is freed from the subconscious mind and made conscious again. But on a more profound level, our human machine and our best self is freed from the negative influence of that particular ego, just as in the case of a purged antigen. Have you ever had a big pimple form around a bacterial infection, then pop that pimple? In our psychology, the analogous metaphysical equivalent of popping a pimple happens in the reverse, because it's metaphysical, not physical. Instead of popping a pimple to expel the infection, egos are popped to release the consciousness bottled up inside of them. Physically, antigens infect cells to reproduce. Metaphysically, egos envelop consciousness to reproduce. Believe it or not, this is the very real source of universal compulsion to pop pimples, boils, even bubble wrap. It is entirely related to the eureka moment we experience in catharsis, and why we refer to such moment as breakthroughs. Both popping a boil and comprehending an ego is beneficial insofar as it involves liberation from infection. When it comes to liberating ourselves from the grip of egos, something else is produced, and that something is self-knowledge, or what the Greeks called gnosis. A quick review of the previous steps reveals that at no point in the process were we relying on book learning or intellectualism. In fact, we warned against thinking at every stage. Gnosis is experiential knowledge. It is transcendent knowledge, which is received in the consciousness through the superior centers of heart-mind. Self-knowledge, or gnosis, gives us strength, resilience, is what makes us grow. Another word for it is wisdom, and in psychological terms, is what contributes to our capacity for self-actualization, which sits at the pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But how does the product of the analogous ultimate methodology actually accomplish all that? The fact is, a simple circle going around and around through the 7 steps is a little too simple for AUM. As it turns out, what we need is quite literally a spiral. A growing spiral, as it turns out, which reveals how the analogous ultimate methodology can increase self-knowledge over successive applications. It actually looks a lot like a ladder if one looks at it with fresh eyes, and ladders are used for climbing both up and down. And in this particular ladder's case, that's especially true since it is not a ladder at all, but a spiral. And to ascend to the next rung of the ladder, one must undertake one complete revolution of AUM, meaning one must descend before one can ascend. This then reveals the hidden truth to be found within Dante's ladder, Jacob's ladder, Dungeons and Dragons, and countless mythologies where the hero must descend into the labyrinth of the underworld, defeat some monster, dragon, or demon, and free the maiden and recover the treasure from its clutches. Feminists, please take note. In classical literature, the so-called helpless maiden is actually a symbol for our vital energy and our psychology, which are both feminine in nature. The word psychology comes from the proper name Psyche, given by the Greeks to the goddess of the soul, the wife of Eros, the God of love. The analogous ultimate methodology reveals the hidden truth that far from being misogynist propaganda, all such tales from antiquity are allegorical how-to guides designed to stimulate the consciousness with the analogous ultimate methodology into undertaking the practical psychological work succinctly outlined in the 7 steps before you. But that's not all. AUM also reveals nature's preferred pattern for gradual organic growth, rapid destructive change, and organization on a cosmic scale. Of course, as one begins to delve deeper into the analogous ultimate methodology, one soon begins to discover that diagrams of any kind in 2D or even 3D space become less and less capable of capturing its essence. As it turns out, and in and around and through itself, you soon end up with something like this: the 4D hypercube or tesseract. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get into it now, so that will have to wait for some other time. For now, let us state that contemplating and visualizing the true nature of the analogous ultimate methodology in all its aspects, with great diligence and patience, reveals the very nature of reality, and will shed light on any phenomenon found within nature and ourselves. It only requires that we seek gnosis, self-evident experiential knowledge. And for those who have done so, AUM has done just that. From Plato and Archimedes to Walter Russell and Nikola Tesla. The secrets of the universe and their practical applications have revealed themselves to those who were able to visualize, contemplate, and meditate upon the nature of AUM, the nature of natures, and the methodology of methodologies. Unfortunately, the old adage applies: knowledge is power, and with great power comes great responsibility. Also, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But why is it so? We've seen how the analogous ultimate methodology increases self-knowledge as it revolves and expands. But what happens if we reverse direction and the spiral contracts? We end up getting pulled into that age-old cliche of the downward spiral. We all know what that's like. We've all experienced it in one form or another. The forces of mechanical nature are always trying to drag us down, like gravity, testing us and teaching us the lessons we have yet to learn, or the lessons we have forgotten and need to relearn. We have the ability to practice the AUM of psychology in order to counteract the downward spiral and increase gnosis in the process. But if we are derelict in our practice of AUM, our egos grow in number, and their influence grows proportionately. For just as our upright practice of AUM creates and increases gnosis on the upward spiral of our personal hero's journey, our ego's abuse of AUM causes hypnosis and ignorance on the downward spiral. It is during these times, on the downward spiral, that we can become completely self-absorbed, lost in all manner of hypnotic scenarios conjured for us by our egos. Everything from narcissistic self-love to suicidal self-loathing and everything in between. We can say that in any given moment, indeed in every given moment, we face a fork in the road, and how we choose to face the obstacles, ordeals, and challenges presented to us will determine the upward or downward spiral of our lives. Expressed very vividly in symbol and allegory, we can be like Thanos, who, when confronted with the harsh realities of life, namely death, he chose the path of victimhood. He cannot abide the natural course of life, and not only raises his fist in defiance of fate, he fashions the infinity gauntlet, which he wears on his left hand. Seeking the power of the infinity stones, he projects his victimhood on a cosmic level, and commits genocide on that scale, all so that he can feel comfortable and secure. That is the price of comfort and security. Or, when confronted by the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, we can choose the path of the hero. We can pick up that gauntlet the fates have hurled at our feet and wield it on our right hand, seeking the inner strength of AUM, becoming a conduit for that strength, courage, and love, and accepting the mission set before us to bring our inner AUM into the world. Here, in essence, we see the nature of the left-hand path, the path of following our egos, and the right-hand path, the path of the hero's journey, the path of AUM. But we shouldn't make the mistake of assuming the path of AUM is an easy one, nor that our egos will simply go quietly into the night. All those New Age platitudes of letting go of your ego are utterly naive. You can no more let go of your ego than you can let go of an Alabama tick. Egos, like viruses, parasites, and malevolent AI malware, are acting agents with a singular purpose of self-interest. They will tempt, test, challenge, and seek every opportunity to take us off the upward spiral of the right-hand path and try to seduce us onto the downward spiral of the left-hand path. If you have ever suffered from an addiction, phobia, anger management issues, obsessive-compulsive behavior, anxiety, depression, or even stress, you know that these symptoms of egos seem to come automatically and naturally, without effort, as if the egos have the force of gravity on their side, dragging us down with them. So we face an uphill climb on the right-hand path. The path of AUM takes energy and effort on our part, and there hasn't been much in the way of technical support, if you will, to help us deal with the psychological malware called egos, and the hypnotic artificial intelligence which they infect our minds, enslave our consciousness, and waste our vital energy with. That is, until now. If we can agree that most online technology, especially social media, has a kind of hypnotic, even addictive effect, and an overall detrimental effect on our psychology, especially among younger age groups, which the latest research seems to confirm, is it possible to harness that powerful influence on our psychology in a positive way? Can we turn the tables and use the internet and mobile devices to turn things around and reverse some of the deleterious effects on our minds? Can we create a technology platform which supports us in the upward spiral based on the principles of the Analogous ultimate methodology? The answer is yes. With a personal informatics platform based on clinically proven methods of mindfulness, self-tracking, journaling, and sharing, to help you increase your awareness of, release from, and resilience to the actual causes of psychological pain, your egos. A platform which is 100% aligned with the Analogous ultimate methodology. We call it YouMethod. We designed it for use by users of all ages to help individuals and groups cope better with life by knowing themselves. YouMethod is live right now, online, and in free open beta for anyone wishing to experience the ultimate methodology for themselves. You can sign up for it for free at www.youmethod.com, and the link will be in the description. We have plans to develop a mobile application for iOS and Android devices, but such development depends on the success of the beta test and funding support. Knowledge is power. YouMethod puts the power of personal informatics and intelligent journaling in the palm of your hand. As you can see, like the Analogous ultimate methodology, YouMethod is completely secular, focused on helping individuals and groups improve their overall state of mental health and emotional well-being. That's it. No one has to believe in anything to use it, only accept the fundamental self-evident axiom presented by the Analogous ultimate methodology. If nature gave us an immune system to defend our body, and we saw the necessity to create anti-malware to protect our computer systems, surely nature gave us an analogous process by which we can self-heal our psychology. YouMethod operates on the basis that the ultimate methodology cannot work without the first steps of mindfulness, diagnosis, and analysis. And that is exactly what YouMethod can provide through its look, map, and tell functionality. YouMethod can remind you to check in with yourself regularly, not only observing your mood, state, energy level, and acceptance, but capturing that data so you can analyze your progress over time. It allows you to make quick tweet-like messages to yourself after moments of drama, and then provides a platform to expand on those with an intelligent journal that keeps track of any number of keywords for you. The result is, over time, you will see meaningful patterns emerging in your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. These patterns give you clues as to where you need to pay more attention and which egos are giving you the most trouble. But YouMethod doesn't stop there. YouMethod also boosts your ability to achieve synthesis, catharsis, liberation, and self-knowledge, which we look upon as loot, as you make the gradual shift from subconsciousness to consciousness, an increase in self-knowledge, and find greater strength and resilience. Practically speaking, updated for the 21st century with the help of technology, loot is the fabled lost treasure the hero embarks on their quest to recover in every story from antiquity. It also is the practical self-realization symbolized by freeing Psyche from her captives, our egos. Of course, any well-traveled journey deserves a good log to keep track of all your stories, adventures, and misadventures alike. YouMethod's intelligent log allows you to see where you've been, how you got there, and what led to certain circumstances, emotions, and patterns of behaviors, and what you learned from those stories. All that would be valuable enough for an application of the Analogous ultimate methodology. But all of us know that the journey can be a long, hard, and lonely one. That is why we designed YouMethod to be online, so that you can share anonymously as you hang with others. YouMethod allows you to share anonymously only with those people you choose. You can create custom private groups or share with everyone stories, lessons learned, words of wisdom, and in turn, you can read and search what others have shared by keywords so that you no longer feel utterly alone. You'll see there are plenty of others suffering from similar challenges you are. And no one has any ability to troll, berate, insult, or attack anyone on the system. YouMethod is a safe space to share stories, thoughts, feelings, and most importantly, pearls of wisdom. Hearing from people who have walked a mile in your shoes, giving you access to a knowledge base of first-hand experience, comprehension, and cathartic processes, can give you clues and insights to help you overcome your own egos. And that is the ultimate value of the ultimate methodology, to cope better with life. YouMethod is how technology can help us practice and utilize the AUM of psychology. On a larger overarching scale relating to the Atlas project, YouMethod's secular down-to-earth application of the Analogous ultimate methodology brings with it opportunities to provide online training and support to individuals and organizations on best practices related to YouMethod and the ultimate methodology. To do just that, we will establish an online training division called Know You Systems, or Know USys for short, to create presentations, live seminars, videos, interactive tools, and how-to guides, all using an entirely new, friendly, secular, and inclusive language, designed to open productive dialogue between people from all backgrounds and all walks of life, based on the foundation of the Analogous ultimate methodology. So again, just to sum up, YouMethod and Know USys are here to help individuals of all stripes and belief systems self-actualize via spiritually enlightened and empowering, self-evident experiential knowledge of the Analogous ultimate methodology. It's the pure ultimate methodology, the actual ultimate methodology behind all Analogous ultimate methodologies. It is at the very heart and soul of the Atlas project. and takes its rightful place at the top of the pyramid, inspiring the world's first and only technology which can teach and remind people how to practice the analogous ultimate methodology of psychology moment to moment in their lives. But in truth, it is only just the beginning. Come, dear viewer, resolve to brave the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and join us on the adventure of a lifetime, and be a supporter of the Atlas Project on Patreon. Learn more about the Atlas Project at www.theatlasproject.com. That's Atlas with 2 T's. And we look forward to your support.